Masechet Batra, Daf Yod Aleph. We continue with more statements about the importance of giving charity. Tanya, Amru alav al Binyamin Sadiq, shaya memune al kupa shel tzedakah. פעם אחת באת אישה לפניו בשני בשורת, אמרה לו, רבי, פרנסני. אמר לה, העבודה שאין בקופה של צדקה כלום. Braita teaches a story about a person named Binyamin the righteous. I guess he was righteous, that was his name. And he was appointed to be in charge of the charity fund. And one time a woman came during years of famine, and she said, "My master, please sustain me." And he said, "I swear by the avodah, the temple service, that the charity fund is empty. I have nothing to give you." Amra lo, Rabbi, im en ata mefarneseni hare isha v'shiva baneha metim. And she pleaded. She says, if you don't provide for me, a woman and her 7 sons will die, meaning herself. She is down to the last bit, and that's it. They are going to starve to death if they don't get some food or money. Amad upirnesa mishelo. And so Binyamin HaSadiq, he took money out of his own pocket and he provided for her. לימים חלה ונטה למות. אמרו מלאכי השרת לפני הקדוש ברוך הוא, ריבונו של עולם, אתה אמרת, כל המקיים נפש אחת מישראל, כאילו קיים עולם מלא. ובנימין הצדיק, שהחיה אישה ו7 בניה ימות בשנים מועטות הללו. And so, after some time, this Binyamin HaSadiq, he got sick and he was almost going to die. But the angels in heaven went to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and said, Master of the universe, is this fair? You said that anyone who sustains a life in Israel, it's as if he sustains the world entire. And this Binyamin, the righteous, he has sustained the life of a woman and her 7 sons. Should he die at a young age? Is that fair that he's done so much good for others and yet he's going to die of this disease and die young? He's only few in years. Miyad kara'u lo gezar dino. So as soon as the angels said this prayer, immediately up in heaven, Hashem tore his sentence and decreed that he will live. Tana, hosifu lo 22 shana al shenotav. Another Braita says that the 22 years were added to his life. So we see from here the great reward for helping the poor. Not only was he a tzaddik in that he was a trustworthy attendant of the charity fund, but when it was empty, he went and provided from his own pocket. Okay, one interesting point here is this quote. Kol mekem nefesh achat misrael is a quote from the Mishnah in Masechet Sanhedrin that is talking about giving a warning to witnesses and capital punishment. It says, listen, if you're lying and we kill the defendant based on your words, this is really serious, because anyone who kills someone is like kills the whole world. And we learned that from Adam Harishon. He was created just one person, not a whole community created, in order to teach us that from one person, the whole world can be populated, and therefore one person equals the whole world, and so you better make sure that you are telling the truth. Now, what's interesting here is a couple of things. First of all, the angels say, Ata amarta, Hashem, you said. Now, this is not a pasuk. It's derived from the fact that Adam Rishon was created singly, and so it is a derivation. So in that sense, you can say, Ata amarta, Hashem, you said, by teaching us the Torah, in which it says Adam was created singly and he populated the whole world, you taught us that killing one person or sustaining one person is like the world entire. Okay, the other interesting thing is the word Mi Yisrael over here. If we look at manuscripts of this daf here in Baba Batra, you can see that Ta'amata kol mekem nefesh achat mi Yisrael actually does appear in all manuscripts. However, if we look at the original Mishnah Sanhedrin 4:5, so you can see here, this is the manuscript of the Rambam's own handwriting right here. And it says, Kol mekayem nefesh achat malim alav ke'ilu. You see, it doesn't have the word mi Yisrael. And also in the oldest and considered the most reliable manuscript, called the Kaufman manuscript. It also says here, Ki'ilu kol me'abed nefesh achat ma'alin alav ki'ilu ibed olam maleh. Mekem nefesh achat, it doesn't have the word Misrael, not in this line and not in that line, Ki'ilu kiem olam maleh. Now, these versions that don't have the word Misrael make more sense because we're learning this fact from Adam Arishon, the fact that Adam was created singly and he populated the whole world, and therefore, if someone murders a person, then they're murdering also all the potential population that could come from that person, and which is potentially the whole world. Since we're learning this from Adam Harishon, who was not Mi-Israel, it would make sense that this should apply to any person, not only someone Mi-Israel. And so that makes sense that the original Mishnah did not have the word Mi-Israel. However, over time, some manuscripts and printed editions have the word Mi-Israel, and so if we look in our story, it makes sense for there to be Israel here because we're talking about Jews. This Binyamin Hasadik, he sustained a Jewish woman and her 7 Jewish sons. So there's no loss here in adding in Kol Mekem Nefesh Achat Misrael, since it happens to be talking about the fact that he saved a Jew. If someone goes and saves a life nowadays, if it happens to be a Jewish person, you say, oh, he saved a Jewish life. If he saves a non-Jewish life, you'd still say, what a great thing he did. He saved a life. So you can be more particular or more general depending on the situation. So it seems that this story here is adapting the original Mishnah that did not have the word Misrael and adapting it to this context where he did save a Jewish family. However, even though none of the manuscripts have the word Mi-Israel, if you look carefully at, this is the first printed edition of this Masechet, Baba Batra. This is from Venice, 1520, printed by Daniel Bomberg. And here you can look at it. It has the word Misrael in the text itself. However, right, you can see it here, right over here. However, if you look in the commentary of Rashi, he says, Ata Amarta. Rashi is bothered by that question. What do you mean, Hashem, you said? Where did Hashem say this? This is not a pasuk. Rashi explains, Mitoratecha lamadnu, lefichach nivra adam yichidi, lomar lecha, kol hamekayem nefesh achat, ki'ilu kiyem ha'olam maleh. Uchtiv, kol deme'achicha, damo v'dam zar'ayotav. So Rashi explains that from your Torah, we learned that this is so, because, and then he quotes the Mishnah in Masechet Sanhedrin, therefore Adam Harishon was created singly to teach and that anyone who sustains a life. And you see that Rashi does not have the word Mi-Yisrael. So even this Rashi here on the daf does not have it. All right, there's a lot more to talk about regarding this this word and these manuscripts. But in any case, this is one of the places where this Mishnah is cited. It's cited in a whole bunch of other places, and there's a whole article about this if anybody is interested. Tenor Rabbanan, Maaseh b'munbaz hamelech shebizbez osrotav ve'oserot avotav b'shnei basoret v'chabru alav echav ובית אביו ואמרו לו, אבותיך גנזו והוסיפו של אבותם, ואתה מבזבזם. Another braita about a story of King Munbaz. King Munbaz, he was a king of a small area, a principality in Iraq. Iraq at this time was ruled by the Persian Empire, the Parthian Persian Empire. However, there was this small area that was semi-independent, and it was ruled by this guy, King Munbaz, whose mother was Queen Helena of Adiabene. That's the area that's called Adiabene. Archaeologists found the sarcophagus of Queen Helena. She is mentioned many times in the Talmud. And what's so significant is that Queen Helena and her family were not Jewish, but they converted to Judaism. And they were righteous and pious. and supported the rabbis, visited the Bet HaMikdash, and so on. So there's a lot of amazing stories about this family that are mentioned by Josephus and also in the Midrash and the Talmud. Okay, so here is one such story, not about Queen Helena, that there are a lot of stories about, but rather by the king himself, King Munbaz, that he went and gave away all of the treasures and the treasures that his fathers and forefathers had stored up, and he gave it away to the people in the years of drought. And people were really suffering, and so he just gave away all of this charity, all the savings of his royal treasury. And his brothers and his father's family, they all ganged up against him, and they protested, and they said, your fathers stored up and added more to the storage, to the treasury of their fathers, and you just waste it away and just give it all away just like that. They're really upset that he did this. And he defends his actions. Amar lehem, avotai ganzu lemata vani ganazti lema'ala, shenemar, emet me'eres tismach v'sedek mishamayim nishkaf. He said, my fathers, they gathered treasures down here on earth, but I am gathering treasures up in heaven, merits for the afterlife. As the pasuk says, truth will spring from the earth and righteousness will look down from heaven. In other words, when you do good things here on earth, then the storage is kept up in heaven. אבותיי גנזו במקום שהיד שולטת בו, ואני גנזתי במקום שאין היד שולטת בו, שנאמר צדק ומשפט מכון כיסאך. My fathers, they stored up in a place that people can reach. You can just go and take it from the storehouse over here. It could be stolen, it could be lost. But I saved up in a place that nobody could reach, because this pasuk says that righteous and justice are the foundation of God's throne, which is up in heaven that nobody can reach, and therefore it's safer. אבותיי גנזו דבר שאין עושה פירות, ואני גנזתי דבר שעושה פירות, שנאמר, אמרו צדיק כי טוב, כי פרי מעלה להם יאכלו. My fathers gathered something that does not generate profit, but I stored up something that does generate profit. As the pasuk says, say of the righteous that it'll be well with them, because they eat the fruit of their doing. They can eat the profits of their doing and not cut into the principle itself. Whereas my fathers, they just put a lot of gold in the storage house, and it just sits there and does not generate profit. Avotai ganzu osirot mamon vani ganasti osirot nefashot shneimar. Peri sadik aes hayim velokech nefashot chacham. My fathers stored up money, but I stored up souls. He provided for the people in a time of a drought. They otherwise would have died. He saved how many lives? And that is greater, as the pasuk says, the fruit of the righteous is a tree of life, and he that wins souls is wise, that saves lives. Avotai ganzu la'acherim v'ani ganazti la'atzmi shenemar ulcha tiyeh tzedakah. My father saved up for others, meaning they saved up a lot of money, and then they died, and they left it for their family, for their sons. But I saved up for myself. As the pasuk says, it will be considered righteousness for you. The merits that a person gets are his. אבותיי גנזו לעולם הזה, ואני גנזתי לעולם הבא, שנאמר והלך לפניך צדקך כבוד אדוני יאספך. My fathers stored up only for this world, but I stored up merit for the next world. As the pasuk says, your righteousness shall go before you, meaning in front of you. It's waiting for you during the afterlife. The glory of God shall be your rear guard. All right, that was an extensive and beautiful response of Munbaz, the righteous king, to his family. Now all the way back to the Mishnah that said that the citizens of a city have to chip in to pay for the wall and the guards. And who is considered a citizen of the city? He said either if he's there for 12 months, or renting a home, or if he buys a home, then immediately is considered one of the members of the city, and he has to pay this tax. Matintin de la Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel de Tanya. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel omer, im kana ba karka kol shehu, harehu kan ha'ir. Seems that our Mishnah cannot be the opinion of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, because in a Braita, Rashbag says, if someone buys any land, even a little bit, even just a small plot of land, then he's considered like one of the residents of the city and has to pay into the taxes. Whereas our Mishnah says only if he buys a home in it, but not if he buys a little piece of land. Hold on, maybe the Mishnah can be the opinion of Rashbag, because there is another Braita that contradicts the first one. And this one says that if a person buys enough land that one could build a residence on it, then he is considered a member of the city, even if there's no home on it, but the land is big enough. But this is more similar to the Mishnah that says bet dira, which sounds like, right, a residence, or that you can reconcile that with a place that could be a residence, a land that's big enough to be a residence. So if we follow this baraita, then our Mishnah could be the opinion of Rashbag. But what do we do with these two contradictory baraitot? And the answer is Tere Tanae V'alibad Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. In fact, it's a dispute between two Tanaim, two oral traditions, both in the name of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. One says just to leave in the little piece of land, and one says enough land to fit a house. And anyway, our Mishnah could be reconciled with the second, but not with the first. Next Mishnah. En cholkin et chased ad yeheh arba amot lezeh v'arba amot lezeh. If two people share a courtyard, and then one of them wants to split it. So if it's big, then one can force the other and say, hey, I want to split it, and they do. However, it has to be bigger than, it has to be such that each half after they split it will be bigger than 4 amot by 4 amot, because that's the minimum amount of space in a courtyard that's usable for storage or whatever you want to do in a courtyard. If the whole thing that they have right now is 7 amot, and then after they split it, you're just going to have 3.5 and 3.5 for each, then that's too small. And in that case, one of the a neighbor, one of the partners, can say, no, I don't want to split it, because what am I going to do with the 3.5 size courtyard? It's not usable. So if it's less than 4, then the one cannot force the other. If it's more than 4, then he can. Velo et hasadeh ad sheheh bat tish'a kabin lazeh v'tish'a kabin lazeh. Rabbi Yehuda omer ad sheheh bat tish'a chasayeh kabin lazeh v'tish'a chasayeh kabin lazeh. So the first thing was a courtyard. Now we're talking about a field. A field is you need a bigger amount for it to be minimally useful, because you were growing wheat, and just growing a little bit of wheat is not worth the effort. And so if they have two people have a field that they hold in common and they want to split it, one can force the other to split it as long as it is at least 9 kabin, meaning the amount of area that you would need 9 kabin of seed to sow that area. If it's at least 9, if each one after the split will have 9 kabin, and the other also have 9 kabin, then they can split it. But if after you split it, they will have less than 9 kabin, then that's not worth the effort to work that land, and one cannot force the other. That's the opinion of Tanakama. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, half the amount, right? They can one can force the other to split it, as long as they will each end up with 9 halves of a kav, meaning 4.5 for this one and 4.5 for that one. Velo tagina ad sheheba chasi kav lazeh v'chasi kav lazeh. Rabbi Akiva omer bet roba. And if they have a garden, a vegetable garden that they share in common, and one wants to split it, he can force the other, as long as each will end up with half of a kav, meaning the area that you would plant half of a kav of seed for this one and for that one. For a vegetable garden, the area is smaller than for wheat, because vegetables are more expensive, and so that would be worthwhile to cultivate a small garden, one smaller than a field, but not if it's less than half a kav, according to Tanakama. Rabbi Akiva says half of that, a bet rova, right? Meaning a quarter of a kav rather than half of a kav. Velo et ha'terakilin, velo et ha'moran, velo et ha'shobach, velo et ha'talit, velo et ha'merchaz, velo et bet habad, velo et bet ha'shelachin, ad sheyeh bahen kedeh lazeh uchdeh lazeh. And also, one cannot, if two people own the following things in common, one cannot force the other to split it. One is a teraklin, is a dining hall, just like in the picture here, where you have a triclinium, you have these Roman couches that they would lie on their side, just like we do at the Pesach Seder. That's how they regularly dined when they were formal dining. So if you have a room that like this, a dining room that's shared by two people, and then what are you going to do? Split it in half? It's not going to be very usable. Or also not a drawing room, like a living room where you'd invite guests and you're going to split it in half, and it won't be very usable then. Or a dove coat or a talit. You have a cloak, you have a scarf. So what are you going to do? Oh, I want to split it. Now you're going to cut it in half, then it's going to be too small for anyone to use. Or a bathhouse or an olive press, right? What are you going to do with half of an olive press? How are you going to use such a thing? Or an irrigated field. Irrigated field is different from a regular field because it needs channels of water to come and irrigate it. And then if you split it in half, then those water channels aren't going to work as well. And so one can only force the other partner to split all of these things if, after it's divided, it still has enough to be usable. You still call it, oh, this is still a dovecote, or this is still a triclinium. If it still has the name and still usable, then one can force the other to split it. Like a big garment, if it's a very big scarf, even half the scarf is still usable. But if it's not a big scarf to begin with, and then when you split it, what are you going to make it? A handkerchief? It's not going to be a scarf anymore. Ushmo alav cholkin veimlav and cholkin. So the general rule is anything that after you'd split it, you would still call the same thing as before, then they can force each other to split it, but not otherwise. If you have a big scarf and you cut it in two, and you still say, what is this? Oh, it's a scarf. Then one can force the other. But if it's so small that after you split it, you wouldn't call it a scarf anymore, you'd call it something else, like a handkerchief, then you cannot split it. Or maybe a room, if you have a living room, and if it's so big that after you cut it in half, you still say, oh, this is a living room. Smaller, but still living room. But if after you cut it, you call it a hallway, because it's so small, then you cannot force the other to split it. However, all this is when both of the partners are not in agreement. Then one cannot force the other if the result is going to be too small. However, if both agree, even let's say you have a courtyard that's only 5 amot big, and then after they split, it's going to be 2.5 and 2.5. But they both agree. So I'd rather have a 2.5. They both say that, and they'll use it for whatever they want to use it for, then they can split it. Now be obvious, if they agree, then of course they can do anything they want if they agree, right? So, well, that's true for property things. However, it's not true for holy books. If two people own a copy of Sefer Devarim together, and what are you going to do? Well, you know what? Let's split it. Okay, you take the first 20 chapters, I'll take the rest, and so we'll cut it in half. No, you can't do that, because that would be disrespectful to the scroll to cut it in half. You have to read the book in context. You need the whole thing there. And so if they really both want to get rid of it, they can sell it and then split the money, but you can't cut the scroll itself in half. This is a dovecote. It's this kind of circular building where they would put nooks all around the side so that doves can come in, and then they would be able to take the doves or their eggs and collect them there. Gemara, Amar Rabbi Ase Amar Rabbi Yochanan, 4 אמות שמרו חוץ משל petachim. So Rabbi Yochanan teaches that when we say that in the courtyard there has to be at least 4 amot for this one and 4 amot for that one, that excludes the area around the entrances. In other words, let's say you have 2 people have houses and they share a courtyard. And we're going to see, okay, how big is this courtyard? The first thing you have to do is you have to say, listen, since this guy has a door here, he has a right to the area in the courtyard that's 4 by 4 around his door. That's his private personal space, and you don't include that in the area that you're going to end up splitting. And we're going to see later on the same thing is if it's a bigger doorway, let's say that's 8 amot wide, then also you need 4 amot jutting into the courtyard is his personal space. So you exclude that, you get that part, and then the rest of it they will split. Tanya namehachi en cholkim et hachaser ad shehe ba shemone amot lazeh ushmone amot lazeh v'anan tenan 4 amot lazeh ו4 amot lazeh ela shema'mina k'derbi aseh shema'mina. There is a Baraita that supports Rabbi Yochanan's opinion, because the Baraita says that 2 partners who share a courtyard cannot force each other to split it unless there would be 8 amot for this one and 8 amot for that one. Now, how do we understand this Baraita? It says it doesn't agree with our Mishnah. Our Mishnah said that one cannot force the other to split unless there are 4 amot for this person and 4 amot for that person. So how could this Baraita come and say 8 and 8? Rather, this is a proof for Rabbi Aseh's ruling in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. How so? It means that the Baraita is talking about a case where it is including the space in front of the doorway. So let's imagine there's 2 houses just like this with just one regular sized doorway. That's 4 amot. And so the guy that owns this house, he gets 4 by 4 amot for himself, personal space. And the other guy is also going to get 4 by 4. Let's say he also has a regular doorway. So he gets 4, and 4. Now we look at the rest of it and we say how much is left over in the courtyard. There has to be at least 4 by 4 besides that. So the Mishnah was calculating the 4 by 4 besides the area in front of the doorways, whereas the Baraita was calculating the entire amount, including the area in front of the doorways, which is 4 by 4 and 4 by 4, and that's why the Baraita said 8 by 8. But we can reconcile the Baraita and the Mishnah if we follow the ruling of Rabbi Yochanan that we assume already in the Mishnah that each person has their personal 4 amot space in front of their doorways. Now this discussion we have in the same content, but just in a slightly different order. Some asked it as a challenge. Tenan. En acholkin et hachaser ad sheyehe ba 4 amot lazeh ו4 amot lazeh והתניא 8 amot lazeh ו8 amot lazeh אמר רבי יעשה אמר רבי יוחנן 4 amot שאמרו חוץ משל פתחים. In the first version, we started off with Rabbi Yochanan's ruling, and then we said, oh, this is a proof. The Baraita is a proof. And now, instead, we bring the Baraita first as a challenge to the Mishnah. The Mishnah said they cannot force each other to split unless they'll each end up with 4 by 4. But the Baraita said 8 by 8. How can we reconcile these? Rabbi Yochanan comes to the rescue and says, oh, when we said 4 amot, that's in the Mishnah, that's besides the area in front of the doorways. And so if you exclude this 4 by 4 and that 4 by 4, then all the rest of it has to be at least 4 by 4 for this and 4 by 4 for that. The Baraita is including the area of in the door spaces, and that's why he said 8 by 8. אמר רב הונא חסר מתחלקת לפי פתחיה ורב חיסדא אמר נותנין 4 אמות לכל פתח ופתח והשאר חולקין בשווה. Rav Huna has an interesting opinion. He says that we split the courtyard according to the ratio of how many entrances each person has. So let's say this person has 1 entrance, and this person, let's imagine these were 2 separate entrances. And so then when we calculate the entire amount, this person would get 2/3 of the courtyard, and this person who has only 1 entrance gets only 1/3 of the courtyard. That's Rav Huna's opinion. However, Rav Chisda disagrees, and he simply says that we give 4 amot for each entryway, and then the rest they divide equally. So if this guy has one entryway, and imagine this guy again had 2 separate entryways, so then he would get 4x4. He would get a 4x4 here and another 4x4 there. So yes, he gets more personal space, but another 4x4. But the rest they divide equally, not according to the ratio of entrances. Tanya Kivated Rav Chisda. We have a braita that supports Rav Chisda. Petachim shebechaser yesh lahen 4 amot. Haya leze petach echad veleze shene petachim. Ze sheyesh lo petach echad notel 4 amot. Veze sheyesh lo shene petachim notel 8 amot. V'asha'ar cholkin beshaveh. This braita teaches, like Rav Chisda, that every entrance into a courtyard gets its own personal space of 4 amot for loading and unloading and bringing things into the house. Now, if one person has only one entrance and the other person has 2 entrances, then the one who has one entrance gets 4 amot, and the one that has 2 entrances will get a total of 8 amot, and then the rest besides those areas they will split evenly. Haya leze petach rachav 8 amot notel 8 amot keneged hapetach ו4 amot bechaser. 4 amot bechaser maya bidetaihu amar Abaye hachi ka'amar notel 8 amot beorech hachaser ו4 amot berochav hachaser. If one person has one entryway, but it's a very wide one, it's 8 amot, then that person, like this is like the picture now, this is 4x4, the other guy has an entryway that's 8 amot long, so he gets personal space of 8x4. At first the Gemara doesn't understand the language of the Braita, because it says 8 amot, that's according to the width of the entrance, and he also gets 4 amot. We ask about that. Why should he also get 4 amot? Right now we're thinking it's another 4 amot somewhere else in the courtyard that he gets. Why should he get an additional 4 amot? Abaye explains, this is what the Braita means, that he gets 8 amot along the width of the entry by 4 amot that goes into the courtyard, so it's 8x4 altogether. Amar Amemar, Hai pera disufle, yesh lo 4 amot lechol ruach ve'ruach. If someone has a pit for animal food, souffle sounds delicious, but it's not. This is like pits and garbage and stuff that they would put into the pit for animal food. So the owner of that pit, he gets a personal space around it of 4 amot in every direction, because you need to dump things into it and you need the animals to come and eat from it, and so they need lots of room all around it, and that's what he's entitled to. But that's only if there's no special entrance to that pit. However, if there's a particular entrance to that pit, then he only gets 4 amot in front of that entrance, because obviously he's going to go in and put things in the pit, and the animals are going to go in and eat from the pit only from that entrance. It's closed from the other side, so then he doesn't get extra space all around on the other sides. Amar Rav Huna, ach sadra en la 4 amot. Tama mai mishum peruk masao. Hachef shadayeh legavai umefarek. If someone has a portico like this is his house, and the courtyard is out here, and he has this portico, it's a covered area, and it's open all around, so he has an entrance. It's true he has an entrance here, but he doesn't get another 4 amot outside the portico for loading and unloading, because what's the reason why in a regular case, if there's no portico, why do we give the person 4 amot? For putting his animal there so we can load it up and unload it and bring things into the house and take them out. But in this case, since he has this nice big portico, he could just bring the animal right here under it and load and unload, so he doesn't have a right to an additional 4 amot into the courtyard. Mativ Rav Sheshat, echad share batim vechad share achsadraot. Yesh lahen 4 amot. Rav Sheshat challenges Rav Huna from a braita, because it says both gates of a house and gates of a portico, one gets 4 amot. So that sounds like, in addition to the portico, has a gate, he gets another 4 amot besides that. So that's goes against Rav Huna. And the answer is Kitanyahi Baksada de Berav. Oh, this Baraita is talking about a different kind of portico. It's a portico of a study hall. And so the study halls, they wasn't all open like a normal one, but rather it was partially enclosed. Since it's partially enclosed, number one, it'd be hard to get the animal in. Second of all, there's probably stuff in there because it's partially enclosed, so it's somewhat guarded. So there's all stuff in there, so it would not be convenient to bring the animal in. So that's what the Baraita was talking about. If you have an enclosed portico, like the ones you have in front of study halls, then the person who owns that does get an extra 4 amot in front of it if they should come to split it. But we ask about that. Hold on, if this Baraita is talking about this kind of portico, then that would be obvious. This is just a storage room, right? So obviously this would not count. You can't use it for loading and unloading. And our answer is, it's talking about something in the middle. This is a Roman portico, somewhere in the middle between the open one and the closed one. This is a little bit open, a little bit closed. And so here, I might have thought that, well, it's pretty open, so maybe I could bring the animal. People don't store too many things in here. So yes, you can unload and unload in there. That's why the Baraita has to teach me not so. If it's somewhat enclosed, even like a Roman portico, then the owner of this, when they split the rest of the courtyard, gets 4 amot personal space to unload over here, to put his animal. But if it's totally open, like this, then he does not get extra 4 amot of space, and that was Rav Huna's teaching, and now we reconcile the Baraita with the statement of Rav Huna. Tano Rabbanan, Bet Shar ach sadra umirpeset, yesh lahen 4 amot. Baraita teaches that a gatehouse, a portico, and a balcony, the owner of all these things, if they split the courtyard that's surrounding it, the owner of these three things gets 4 amot of personal space. So we understand this makes sense in the gatehouse, where you have to go in and out. He gets the 4 amot around it, and a portico, as we just spoke about, assuming it's some kind of an enclosed portico, and so he gets 4 amot besides it. But also, let's say a person has a balcony. Let's say he had a balcony up here, and he has a staircase going down to the courtyard, and so in front of the staircase he needs to put things here so he can load and unload. So he gets 4 amot of personal space on the bottom of the staircase so that he can use that space and then take things up to his balcony. Next, היו 50 בתים פתוחים למרפסת, אין להם אלא 4 אמות בלבד. Let's say someone had 5 houses open to the same balcony. You could think of those cheap malls where you can see the hotel door rooms they're all on a balcony, all in a row, and they all open up to the same outdoor area, and then you go down one staircase. And so if you had a setup like that, then all those people who have all those entrances to that single balcony, and then the single balcony has only one staircase, they only get 4 amot at the bottom of that staircase. Even though there's 5 openings, they don't get 5 times the amount of personal space because they're all leading to one staircase or one ladder that goes down to the courtyard, and so they only need the 4 amot in front of that staircase. Be'amine Rabbi Yochanan merbi Yanai lul shel tanegolin yesh lo 4 amot or en lo 4 amot. Rabbi Yochanan asked Rabbi Yanai, a chicken coop. That is the owner of the chicken coop. He has a chicken coop in a courtyard, and now they're going to split the courtyard. Does he get 4 amot in front of the chicken coop also as his personal space to use? And his answer was no. Amar le ta'amamai mishum peruk masao hacha metapes ve'oleh metapes ve'yored. The only reason a person gets 4 amot of space is for putting his animal there to load it and unload it. But here the chickens, they climb up by themselves and they climb down by themselves and get out, and therefore you don't need that for those 4 amot for loading and unloading. Next question that Rava asked Rav Nachman: if someone has a house and half of the house has a roof and half of it doesn't have a roof, let's use this picture as an example. Let's make believe the gray here has a roof. And this, let's say, make believe this is a part of the house. It has walls and everything, but has no roof. There's no roof on this part of the house. So what about that? And there's an entrance over here. Does he get 4 amot of space, Or not? Do we say since there's no roof, it's like open area, and then you can use that for unloading and unloading? Amar lo en lo 400, lami ba'ya keruyom legav de'efshar de'ayel legavai u'mefarek, ela afilu keruyo kelape chutz, efshar de'ayel legavai u'mefarek. And so he answered that no, he does not get another 400 of space outside in the courtyard. And this is true not only if the covered area is on the inside, that for sure he doesn't get it because he has his animals, he's bringing them in the alleyway, in the courtyard over here, so he could bring them right into this area that has no roof, and then he can load and unload in this area. So then for sure he doesn't get 4 amot outside. But not only that, even if it was flipped around, and let's say the entrance was over here on this side, and so that the covered area comes first, even in that case, he would not get an extra 4 amot outside in the courtyard, because the owner can just bring the animal to the back and unload and load over here, so he does not get an extra 4 amot in the courtyard itself. בעמיני רב הונא מרבי עמה, אחד מבני המבוי שביקש להחזיר פתחו למבוי אחר, בני מבוי מעכבין עליו או אין מעכבין עליו? אמר לה, בני מבוי מעכבין עליו. Rav Huna asked Rabbi Ameh, if you have a bunch of people that share an alleyway, that's bnei mavoy, let's say like here, you have 5 people, they're all sharing this alleyway. And one day, one of these guys, let's say this guy over here, he says, you know what, there's an alleyway behind me over here, and I want to join that alleyway instead. I'm going to close up this entrance, and I'm going to open up an entrance there, and now I'm going to join the other one. Can these other people stop him from doing so? The answer is yes. Why? Because when he's part of this alleyway, they're splitting the expenses of the alleyway over here, like putting a gate over in the entrance or whatever. And so he's splitting it equally with everybody else. If he says, I'm going to the other one, now they all have to pay more. And therefore, they can stop him from doing so. Aksanya, lefi bnei adam mitchaleket, or lefi petachim mitchaleket. Next question that Rav Huna asked is, let's say the Romans come and they say, we have some soldiers here and you have to house them for this amount of time. That's part of the obligation of the citizens in the empire, that they have to house and feed the soldiers when they come to town. So now that they do that, how do they divide the expenses? Is it according to the number of people that live in each home, or according to the number of entrances? And his answer was, it goes according to the people in each home. Every house, if you have a big household, then you're going to have to contribute more to hosting the soldiers. And if you have only one person in your house, then you contribute less. We have a braita that supports this. If you have a bunch of homes that are sharing a courtyard, so any dung that is in the courtyard and everybody wants it, let's say for their fertilizer, so that you split by the number of entrances. You have more entrances, you get more dung. However, regarding hosting soldiers, that doesn't follow the number of entrances, but rather the number of people that live in each home. They would have to take care of more soldiers. Hamar Rav Huna, echad מבני מבוי שביקש לסתום כנגד פתחו, בני מבוי מעכבים עליו שמרבה עליהן את הדרך. So Rav Huna says that if one of the people in an alleyway wants to close up the entrance that is opposite his opening, in other words, like over here, let's say this guy here, he has an entrance of his own courtyard here, and on the other side he has an entrance also opposite it. And let's say he says, I want to close this up. So his argument is, this is in my area in front of my courtyard, so can I close up this part? And the answer is no, he cannot, because these guys over here, let's say they can go out the alleyway this way, but what if they want to take a shortcut and they want to go use that? So they have a right to take the shortcut, and this guy cannot close it up and stop them from doing so. So that's his answer. That's Rav Huna's ruling, that the other people can stop him from doing so. Now we challenge Rav Huna's ruling from a baraita. Me'etibe, 5 chaserot petuchot lamavoy kulan mishtameshot im hachitzona, v'hachitzona mishtameshet le'asma. If you have 5 different courtyards that are all open into the same alleyway. So they can all use the outermost area of the alleyway, right? Because this guy back here, he can go in and out, and all of them, they can all go in and out. But this guy who lives at the end, he can only use the area in front of his courtyard, but he has no right to go walk back here. What is he walking back here for? This doesn't lead to anything, and therefore he only has a right to use this area and go out. That's it. Now the rest of these guys, right, the three guys in the back, they can use the second guy's area and the first guy's, but this guy, the second guy, he can use his area and the first one, but he cannot go back to the back ones. And so on down the line. So in the end, the innermost guy, he has exclusive right to use his area, and he cannot and he can use all the ones afterwards. So this guy is actually the luckiest because he has an area in front of his courtyard that's exclusively his, and he can also use everybody else's, and those four people cannot use his area. Now, what do we see according to that? That it should be permitted for that last guy, the innermost guy. Let's say he has an opening on the other side opposite this his opening. He should be able to close it up, since the other four people cannot go back there, and they would not be able to use his area anyway. So this is a contradiction to Rav Huna, because Rav Huna says none of the people in the courtyard can close up entrances in their area in front of their courtyard. But according to this baraita, the innermost guy should be able to close up his area. And the answer is Tana'ehi. Actually, there's two Tana'im. There's a machloket about this, and Rav Huna is following one, and this baraita is following the other. דתניא, אחד מבני המבוי שביקש להחזיר פתחו למבוי אחר, בני המבוי מעכבין עליו, היה סתום ביקש לפותחו, אין בני המבוי מעכבין עליו, דברי רבי שמעון בן אלעזר אומר, 5 חסר פתוחות למבוי, כולם משתמשות במבוי זו עם זו. The language of this baraita is not so clear, and we're about to add some words to it to make it clearer. So let's just translate the way it is. The baraita teaches, if one of the people in an alleyway wants to change his entrance to a different alleyway, wants to switch from this side to the other side, so the other people in the alleyway can stop him. In other words, he's opening up to here, and now he wants to change it, close this up, and go the other way. So the other people, as we said before, can stop him, because then he's not contributing to the taxes of that alleyway. Hayas satum, if it was already closed and he wants to open it up, then the other people in the alleyway cannot stop him, according to the B. In other words, if there had already been an opening over here, and it was closed up, but you can still see the outline of the opening. Since it was there once before, he can open it up again. And there's a possibility of two objections of the people in this alleyway. They could say, no, you pay taxes over here, we need you. There's also a possibility of objections from the other alleyway. The people over here can say, oh, we have enough traffic, we don't want you opening up a new opening and bringing more traffic into our alleyway. So if there was never an opening, then they can object to that. However, if there was once an opening there, even if it was sealed up, he can reopen it and says, well, I always had an opening here, I'm just reopening it, and I have a right to use that alleyway, and the other people cannot stop him. That's the opinion of Rabbi. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says that when there are 5 courtyards open to the same alleyway, they can all use the entire alleyway, right? They have 5 people, this guy can go back here, and this guy can go use the whole thing. They can all use the entire thing. Now, before we use this to solve the problem, the challenge that we had against Rav Huna, we first have to explain this baraita better. Chaserot man dachar shemayhu. How come Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar is all of a sudden talking about courtyards, and who can use the courtyard, the owners of the courtyards, and who can use the alleyway? That is not related to the laws that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi said here. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was talking about one of the members of the alleyway who wants to move his entryway. He wants to move from this side to the other side. If it was an entryway and it was closed up, up, then he can reopen it. So the first case they can stop him, and second case they cannot stop him. That's what Rabbi was talking about. He's talking about opening and closing entryways. And then Rabbi Shimon ben Lazar comes and talks about the people of the courtyard and who can use the alleyway. Well, this is a non sequitur. They're not talking about the same thing. So why would these be two things be in the same braita? Oh, so we answer chasura mechasra v'hachi ketani. In fact, this braita is missing words. And so first we have to add in the words. V'chen chamesh chaserot petuchot lamavoy kulan mishtameshot im achisona v'achisona mishtameshet la'asma divrei Rabbi. So Rabbi, he says the same halachot that he has here regarding someone who wants to move his entranceway, and if there was already an entranceway and then now he's reopening it, and then Rabbi continues and says another halacha: if there are 5 courtyards that are open to the same alleyway, everybody can use the outermost one over here. This one, because they all have to go out, but this guy cannot use any of the other 4, and so on and so forth until this guy in the back he has exclusive right to use the area in front of his courtyard, and he can use any of the ones in front. That is all the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. So we see that the braita that we use to challenge Rav Huna from this one over here is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. But now we see there is another opinion. Rabbi Shimon ben Lazar omer chamesh chaserot petuchot hamavoy kulam mishtameshim b'mavoy. Rabbi Shimon ben Lazar disagrees, and he says that all 5 people around here can use the entire alleyway. This guy also can go all the way to the back. Because of that, this would fit the opinion of Rav Huna. Rav Huna says even the guy in the back cannot close up an entrance that is opposite his entrance. That's because this guy could say, I want to use a shortcut and go all the way back here. And so Rav Huna can follow the opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, and that solves the challenge from the Braita, because the Braita is the opinion of Rabbi. Amar Mor, Hayasatum bikesh lefotcho en b'nei mavoy ma'akevin alav. Now that we quoted this part of the Braita in the name of Rabbi, let's analyze that. It says that if it had been if there was an entrance once upon a time, and then it was closed up, and now the owner of that courtyard wants to reopen it, the other members of that alleyway cannot stop him. In other words, if let's say this guy here, let's say he was once upon a time part of an alleyway back here, and then closed it up, and now in the meantime he was over here, but now he wants to reopen it and go back there. Can the members say, oh, we don't want any more traffic here, and you closed up your entry, you cannot come here? Rabbi Yehuda Nasi said no, since there used to be an entrance here, so he can reopen the entrance, and he still has a right to use that alleyway. Amar Rava lo shanu ela shelo paratz et pesimav, aval paratz et pesimav b'nei mavoy ma'akevin alav. Rava has a limitation to this ruling. So this is only if when he closed up that doorway, he did not break its doorposts down. But if he broke down the doorposts, then the other members of the alleyway can say, sorry, you permanently removed your entranceway. In other words, like this picture. Let's say there was once an entranceway, and he closed it up. He put a wall here, but there's still the outline of the doorway, so it's still an indentation. So that means the entranceway is still there. Happened to be closed up for some time, but he opens it up. He says there was always an entranceway here. I have a right to go in and out of here into that alleyway. Then he has a right to do so. However, if he completely closed it up such that you cannot even see the outline of there's no indentation for the outline of the doorway anymore, then that's a complete sealing up, and that entranceway is gone, and then the people in the alleyway can tell him, no, we can't do that. Amar le Abaye l'Rava, Tanya de Mesayeh lach. Abaye tells Rava, I have a baraita that supports your opinion. Bayit satum yesh lo arba amot, paraset pesimav en lo arba amot. The baraita teaches that if there's a house with a sealed entrance, it still gets 4 amot in front of it. Let's say they have a courtyard and they're going to split the courtyard. That's the personal space, unloading and unloading dock. Loading and unloading dock for that entrance, he still gets it, even though it's closed up. However, if he broke the doorpost down and totally sealed it up, then he doesn't get it anymore. In other words, if it looks like this person has a house and there's an entranceway, even though it's sealed up, and now they're going to split the courtyard, So he still gets 4 amot because there's the outline is still there. But if it's totally sealed up, he took down the doorpost outline, then he doesn't get the 4 amot of entryway anymore. And finally, kever shepitcho satum eno metame kol sebibav paras et pesimav ustamo metame kol sebibav bayit satum eno metame kol sebibav paras et pesimav metame kol sebibav. There's a law about corpse impurity, that if it's inside a tent or a house, then the tum'ah, if there's an entryway, then the tum'ah will be directed towards that entryway, so that a kohen would not be allowed to go in the area, in the hallway between the corpse and the entryway. That whole hallway will be tameh. However, since there's an opening, an entryway, the tumah goes only to that in that direction and will not spread out in the other direction. However, if there is a house or a cave that has no openings at all, then the tum'ah spreads throughout the entire thing. And so that's what we're talking about now. If you have a grave, meaning like a cave, and it has an opening, but the opening is sealed, so that's okay, because it's still an opening, even though it's sealed, but there's still an outline of an opening. So then the tum'ah will be directed towards that opening and will not go all around the surrounding areas. However, if someone not only closed up the opening but also broke down the doorpost so that it's totally there's no doorpost at all anymore and it's totally sealed, then that's not called an entranceway anymore, and then the tum'ah will spread all around. And the same thing if a corpse is in a house and there's an entrance that's sealed, but you can still have the indentation of the doorway, then that's still called the doorway, and the tum'ah all will go to that direction and not spread all around. However, if someone breaks down the doorpost and now there's no more outline of a doorway at all, then that's not considered a doorway, and the tum'ah will spread all around. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen ve'amen.